jokes and considering I'm the guy doing the talking. And I know we're starting just a few minutes late, but we're trying to be sensitive to some of those folks that were probably still stuck in traffic. How many of you been to a Center for Business Growth event before? Okay, a few of you, so this is new. So let me tell you first about the Center for Business Growth. We are a member-only community of owners, C-level executives. We provide a place where businesses and leaders can engage in interactive educational forums in a non-sales environment. That was our goal when we started this back in 2018, I believe is the exact year. And ultimately, to learn best practices from us and from each other. So that's the goal of this organization. It is free to join. There's a membership form on our website if you'd like to fill it out. And we're always looking for new members to help increase our base. But as you can see, there's a lot of folks who are not members who are here. And so you don't have to be a member to come to our events, but we do like to be able to communicate with you as things go on. The founding members are myself, Angelo Ponzi, and my company is called Kraft, and I'm a fractional CMO. Bob Janowitz, who's a partner of Phillips. Rick Franzi, who's the business partner here in Orange County REF. Wayne Pinnell, back there with managing partner with Haskell and White. We've got Bruce Lithium, where's Bruce? He's here someplace. He is the managing director of Stone Creek Capital. Jonathan Batista is back there as well. Financial advisor Joseph Urasek, he's the president of Fifth Third Bank, but we do have some representatives here from Fifth Third tonight, and Rose Novrock, who's the principal in Epic Insurance. The goal tonight in looking at AI is leveraging AI for productivity improvements and risk management. Now before I let our guests tell you who they are, I'm going to give them 3 minutes each to do that. We've got you guys didn't sit in the order I put this in. Kathleen Peters, who's the Chief Innovation Officer at Decision Analytics Experian. Usama, who's here, who's a partner at Phillips, and Hector Garcia, who calls himself Hector the Connector, and he's a CPG expert in AI maverick. And it's interesting with Hector, I've known him a long time, and you talk about people jumping in head first, feet first. He's jumped in full body slam into AI, so it'll be very interesting. We talk about marketing when it comes to Hector. So why don't we take a few minutes, if you will. We'll start with Kathleen. Just give a brief overview of who you are.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us here this evening. So my name is Kathleen Peters, and as Angela mentioned, I'm with Experian, which is just down the street. And I think a lot of folks don't actually realize sometimes that this is our home right here in Orange County for Experian. Experian has a lot of different divisions, and the one that I've been most closely associated with is our decisioning and analytics software organization, and that includes identity verification and fraud detection. I've been with Experian for about 10 years, a little more than, and during that time, most of the time I've spent looking at solutions and product management and strategy for identity verification and fraud detection, especially when we're engaging with things online. And it can be hard to tell who is on the other end of the internet. And so as generative AI started to become publicly available in its most common forms like ChatGPT that we know, this was an area that was very fascinating for myself and for my team. And these days I'm looking after a lot of our new innovation efforts at Experian, and AI is right at the heart of them.
Great, thank you.
Sure, my name is, I didn't call myself Hector the Connector, someone else did. So, anyhow, it's stuck and it's been me for quite a while. I am the real Hector the Connector. I have been into branding and packaging with my own agency for 25 years. And prior to that, some of you here will know what things were like back in 1990. There was a revolution going on, and that revolution catapulted my career. I was a kid in LA that knew how to draw and paint. I learned the Mac in 1990. Along with tricking a girl into marrying me, that changed the trajectory of my life, learning the Mac changed the trajectory of my career. And at that time, people were drawing a line in the sand, and they were true creatives. They knew how to draw and paint just like I did, and that's what this agency was like where I went to work back in '90. I learned the Mac and went to this agency, and people embraced me, but there was only one Mac there and no one knew how to use it. I did. They hired me on the spot, and I was like a kid in a candy store working on all these big brands. There were people that were grumbling in the shadows going, hell no, I'm not touching that keyboard. I'm not a computer operator. I work with these hands. I'm a true artist. I paint, I draw. These hands are my equity right here. Well, they drew a line in the sand. That line ended up getting them into the unemployment line, while I was on a fast track of, growing myself personally as a designer and creative. I see the same thing happening today with AI. I am 18 months in, my team is all in, I'm all in. Like Angelo said, I drank the Kool-Aid. It's amazing. So I want to share some of my stories later with you guys.
Great, thank you.
And I'm Usama. I'm a partner at the law firm of Phillips, based in Irvine, California, where we have 37 offices around the country, 600 lawyers, and about 30 lawyers in Mexico. My specialty is AI and privacy. I'm the co-chair of the privacy practice group and a member of the AI practice group at the firm. Bob Janowitz is a very close friend of mine, who is my mentor and has saw me through the years. I've been at Fisher Phillips for 10.5 years. In the world of AI and privacy, what I do, particularly in AI, is advising businesses on the legal implications of AI, helping negotiate contracts, figuring out the guardrails from the legal side, any of the legal implications. My industry gets a bad rap for being the naysayers, telling you how not to do something, right? I try to do this where I figure out the legal solution that gets you to achieve your business objectives the most. So that's my approach to legal advice in the AI world. I think that when it comes to innovation in AI, you need all three sectors represented. And that's why I love the fact that all, this diverse panel of expertise is assembled. And last note is, I've never been to a speaking event where I can hold a drink. Cheers, thank you.
Okay. So before we get into the questions, I just want to take a few points here. So what is AI? What is artificial intelligence, right? It's the machine's ability to perform some cognitive functions usually associated with the human mind. So when did it all start? Now most of us, in the last couple of years, right? ChatGPT, who's tried ChatGPT? Yeah, pretty much everybody. But actually, back in the 1950s, computer scientist and mathematician Alan Turing envisioned the future where machines could perform functions faster than humans. AI was officially invented in 1956. Personal calculators became widely available in the 1970s, and by 2018, the U.S. Census showed that 92% of American households had a computer. By the end of 2023, 97% of Americans owned a cell phone, and 85% of those were smartphones. Some computers, talk about supercomputers, we looked at called the pettascale, how fast they would calculate. Some have now crossed the hectascale, which is 10 to the 18th power. So 31 billion plus calculations, if you will, in a single second. It would take an individual 31 billion plus years to do the same calculations that a computer cannot do in 1 second. So incredible. So AI itself is the machine's ability to perform cognitive functions, right? Interacting, solving problems, environmental, increasing creativity. Generative AI, which is really what we're talking about, generates content in response to a prompt. That's what we all kind of get used to, ChatGPT and some of those. Applied AI is the artificial intelligence ability to solve real-world problems. Now, I'm a market researcher. by nature, my background, and so we've been doing predictive and prescriptive analytics and using machines that do calculations and do projections. Now, it can happen literally on my desktop by asking a few prompts. So the value of AI is not in the systems themselves, but rather in how companies use these systems to assist humans to make more business efficient and profitable. A recent study by Google, 64% of executives want to use AI. 92% of Fortune 500 companies are using open AI technology. 94% of business executives believe that AI is the key to the future. And generative AI is already being used by 73% of all the marketing departments. So this is not something that we can ignore. It's coming on fast. Most of us that got exposure to this, I went kicking and screaming about a year and a half ago when I was in a meeting and an agency guy stood up and said, I fired all of my copywriters, I'm only using ChatGPT. And you know, I couldn't believe he said that, and I probably had some choice words for him. But here, you know, a year later, I'm experimenting. I'm trying to figure it out as we look at ChatGPT and Gemini and Copilot and Perplexity and Chat. Where did Chat come from? It came out of nowhere. Great article recently in the Wall Street Journal on that. So, enough of me. First question for each of our panelists. How do you think AI or generative AI will change how companies do business? Broad question.
You want to take it?
No, you're welcome.
Wow, how do I think it's going to change? Can you repeat that question?
Yeah. How do you think AI or generative AI will change how companies do business?
Objection vague.
No,
I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
Broad question.
It's already changing everything in my business, and I'm 18 months in. I'm here because of AI. I was in Salt Lake City a week and a half ago because of AI. All these doors are opening. My business is transforming. I'm able to do things 3 times faster, 10 times better. Am I charging any less? Nah. I've invested heavily in my people. I've invested heavily in the tools, and I've invested heavily in my craft. So anyone here that has decades of experience or 5 or 10 years and you're somewhat of an expert, you're like really good at what you do, you are going to be so much further ahead than anybody else that isn't using AI if you adopt AI. The doors are incredible. I've got somebody on my left who's streamlining business processes, taking old ways, which, you know, circa 2022, a whole whopping year and 8 months ago, you know, to like 10 years, 15 years, they're still doing the same thing the same way. We're taking 2-3 hours worth of work and making it into minutes.
Victor, can you give some specifics, just examples?
An example, paperwork, any manual type of order taking that anybody does out in the field, got a client actually right there. And we are working on doing that. I've got a partnership with someone that's got 30 years in machine learning, 15 years in AI. He's much smarter than I am. He is using robotics and AI and making manual processes turn into from hours to minutes, saving tons of money. I've got another guy on my right-hand side. He's a teacher, and he teaches AI. So I think everybody in the room knows I've gotta learn it. What's the first step? So my business is changing. How I do business is changing. We do photo shoots and literally people still doing the same thing today that they were 30 years ago, because I've been art directing photography for 30 years, food specifically, and beverage is kind of my niche. We're taking huge amounts of dollars, $10,000 to $15,000 for a shoot, 3 weeks to do the shoot. It takes a food photographer, food stylist, an assistant, hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment. I'm doing that. I'm art directing one very well-trained creative in my office, low carbon footprint.
So it's really kind of speed to market in the sense that you can do that. So I want to ask Kathleen a question. So obviously you're using generative AI in Experian.
Yeah.
So a little bit of how you're doing it, but you're dealing with a lot of consumer data.
We are.
And so my question is, what are the concerns that you as a company have? And what kind of concerns are you getting from your consumers when you start thinking about how the data privacy and things like that?
Sure. Well, let me start with the first part of the question, which is how are we using generative AI? I know you asked for like a specific example as well. When the news first broke about generative AI being publicly available and what companies might be able to do with it, I think a number of boards of directors, including our own, went to our leadership and said, I've read a lot about this productivity that's coming. When are we going to have that cost savings? And so they're wanting to look for what are the real material cost savings that we're going to see. And so that was one aspect of it, and I think that Hector gave some great examples of productivity that can be realized, whether it's summarizing documents, searching through vast amounts of data to find insights, to find answers, to connect pieces of data, plot that quickly, for example. We're finding that, not with our direct-to-consumer applications, but with our B2B applications where we're providing, for example, risk assessments to financial institutions about lending. Typically, we would have to have data scientists go through a lot of anonymized credit bureau data, look for insights, apply scores. These would have to be highly skilled people. It would take some weeks or months to do that. Send that score to the bank, some more weeks or months, and then you could see some results and some nice Tableau charts and tables. Now we can use a generative AI prompt and in natural language say, can you please give me the trends of mortgage rates and how that was reflected in loans that were taken within this zip code over the last 3 months. And instead of waiting a few weeks or months to get that back from all the models being built, it gives me the answer. I'm like, well, those are nice bullet points. Can you please put that in the bar chart for me? And it comes out. I mean, it's almost magical. But you always have to caveat that with, well, is it going to have some hallucination? What is it basing that on? What information is it getting that from? So these are the kinds of caveats that we are looking at and figuring out how to use this information safely, how to take advantage of environments where the data is anonymized, having the right kind of IT safeguards in an enterprise environment, and ones that are in-house and not training what's called the public models. We're not training ChatGPT with this information. We're using an internal enterprise version.
So one second, you setting up data lakes basically?
Which we have done and we've had in the past, and now we're making those accessible with a ChatGPT interface as opposed to a code interface. What is a data lake is the question. A data lake is a large repository, a massive database where scientists can apply algorithms and query that information, as well as look for trends and insights across that vast amount of data.
But it's not public data.
No, these are usually in-house.
Yeah, and that's a big difference. By going on ChatGPT, you're basically, I was working on a project. I said, I need a case study to support my point. I got these incredible case studies back. They were wonderful. But when I started digging into them, I'm like, these are all bullshit. They just were made up. And so that's the danger that you run into. And so for me, there's still that human element. You just can't take the data that you get right off the bat.
I was going to give another example of a use case for the question over there of how it's changing the world. I have a large client that has tens of thousands of sales employees around the country. And they figured out that every sales call results in an average of 2 to 3 minutes after the call of the individual spending some time logging into their CRM, what happened during that call. Action items, what do we do, follow up, etc. They were able to cut that down by developing their own internal AI, even though there are tools you can buy and vendors that are developing that kind of tool, but they wanted it to be specific to their data and their type of business, so they only use their own data. And they developed their own internal AI, or in the process of developing it, and they tested it to figure out that 2 to 3 minute average per person for tens of thousands of salespeople that are doing multiple calls a day, where they're spending probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions of calls per year, probably more than that. They can cut the 2 to 3 minutes average to less than a second. where the AI note taker would interpret the language, interpret what is discussed, and input directly into the CRM all the things that they were going to input.
And classify it, right? And
Yeah,
classify it.
classify, come up with the, assessments, figure out what are the action items, like all of the things that you need to do. So that's just an example of how it's going to change the world with companies developing better ways to do business that they can do it cheaper, better, faster.
So there's, if we think about labor, which you deal with, there's a concern, right, about displacement of people and that, and I've got a whole bunch of stuff over here, I'm not gonna read it all. But for those of us that well, I don't deal with employees, but for those of you that deal with employees.
Good for you, yeah.
So what are some of the kind of legal issues and concerns that people need to keep in mind when they start using tools for hiring and for recruiting and all those kinds of things?
Bias. So there are a lot of pending bills and pending regulations around the country that are going to pass eventually, meaning give it a year to two, you're going to have a lot of laws around the country pertaining to bias when it comes to using any kind of AI tool that assists you in the making of a decision that impacts an employee's pay, compensation, benefits, position, responsibilities, etc., whether it's hiring, firing, promotions, job assignment, all of that. An example of that is the pending federal bill has that. The pending California bill has things related to discrimination. The Colorado bill that passed and got signed by the governor has that component. So one of the main concerns is how is this going to, how does the AI tool or algorithm that you're using impact people, employees in protected categories? So even before you get any laws, right? So if you want to implement something today, you can still get sued in a class action disparate impact discrimination claim if you're using the tool to facilitate the making of hiring or firing or promotion decisions. For example, a tool that sorts through thousands of resumes and scores candidates based on what you're looking for in a successful candidate and all that. And gives you a score, and then you figure out here are the top 50 out of 1,000 that applied that I'm going to talk to. I'm not even going to look at the other 950. Well, your algorithm needs to have been tested for bias, and there's guidance from the EEOC on this. There's guidance from the state agency. A lot of different agencies are coming up with guidance on this. So these are existing laws that are on the books from decades ago. On discrimination that you can get sued on. It's the easiest class action to certify as a class action because it's just an algorithm, it's a math problem. It either discriminates or it doesn't. And the specific rule from the EOC is the 4/5 rule, which means if it selects a person, if the disparate impact on people in a protected category, meaning they're selected less than 80% of the time for people in the majority category, there's a problem. So that the AI bias is going to be the biggest legal implication, but of course there are others. But that's a major issue right now, is using AI in ways that impact employees in some way. If you do, you gotta test it. You gotta do annual testing most likely. You gotta make sure that you're doing all of those bias audits up front, and then ongoing to make sure that the tool has been tested appropriately.
Great, thank you.
Wow.
So Hector, in the creative world,
Yeah.
whether you're doing art or you're doing writing or you're making a book, the question is, podcast, Mr. Ramsey, 1,500 shows. The question is, can you copyright it? And there's a debate of whether it was created 100% by AI, or what kind of human interaction, and then that creates an issue, right? If you create a piece of art, you create a story, you create a blog, whatever it happens to be, who owns it? And if you do something that you want to publish, you have the rights to that. So can you talk about that?
Sure, fantastic question. So we're talking like originality, right? Anything that's original. I would argue with anybody in here, are you wearing anything original? Your sport coat, your shirt, your shoes, your watch, you get a piece of art.
Another one of these purple suits before?
Does it have a flower with the squid thing in there? So whoever designed that had an idea. So I had an art teacher forever ago, early 80s in college. Took 2 college courses, and I'm from the hood. He said, you can't pour oil out of an empty drum. I never forgot that. So he says, feed your mind. Feed your mind, look at logos, look at lettering, look at this, look at that, right? And feed your mind, and then you'll pour oil out of your drum. It never, ever, ever went away, because all of us look at things and go, oh, that's cool. Or if anybody's ever been to a fashion show, people are there to get ideas and bank them up here. They're copying every single day. There's a quote that Steve Jobs used that was Pablo Picasso's quote that says, good artists borrow, great artists steal. And we all do that, every single one of us. Nothing is original. So I don't know where that comes into play. You can't copyright an image. We do images all day long, and we do amazing images, incredible stuff. But it's human intelligence that we're using, the decades of experience that we have. We have the ability to prompt like nobody else, because we dig with our prompts. We have all of this knowledge, and all of you have knowledge and years of experience that's gonna make you that much better than the next person that doesn't have that. You know, somebody's fresh out of school. That doesn't
So,
know.
question, obviously you guys are both using it. Do you have a perspective on copyright ownership? Go ahead.
I feel like I should do that into Usama.
Why? I mean, I'd say you obviously, if you're in that situation, consult a IP lawyer. The law is changing. It's unclear on that. It depends on a lot of different factors. So really, there is no clear answer. I love Jefferson's point that he told me over drinks earlier about how developing regulations related to AI is like a bunch of spaghetti. Can you say what he said?
Yeah, it's just a bunch of spaghetti in a big bucket.
Yeah, I mean, no one can really make sense out of it. So, do I have a crystal ball to figure out how to make sense out of that? No. This is one of those where my answer is it depends. We got to dig into the details. I can't give you an answer that's going to apply to every context.
Yeah, I think that's kind of good advice or best practice is just like any new technology, the technology is going to move faster than the regulation. So we just need to be conscious of that. We need to be agile and ready to adapt and change as that regulation comes to be. I mean, Experian being a highly regulated business that operates in a very regulated space, we're used to engaging in those conversations, and to the extent that we can experiment, offer our own experience to those regulators as they are creating the new laws, then we want to be a part of that conversation, but we know it's necessary, we know it will be slower than the capability of the tech itself.
And I do have a quick follow-up, Angela.
Okay.
So when we generate images, you can't copyright the image, but you can protect it if somebody else comes out with a like product and tries to sell it next to you. So you could do that. Also, we're in the creative field, and we do amazing work, incredible visuals. So we're in that space. There are some of the largest developers of these tools that are willing to defend anybody that has an image if anybody threatens to sue them. They're like, we got your back. We're going to court, we're gonna defend you. So they're defending people from being sued. And it can be a scary thing, so.
Yeah, what you described, I think it's called a trade dress, where your particular logo or image or something you've developed gets associated with you, and so there can be confusion in the marketplace if someone comes up with a similar or like product.
Correct.
That's the problem.
So it's not really copyright, it's a trade dress type of right, and those are, they've been on the books for a long time.
Yeah.
But to use the exact same prompts, the exact same way, right, there's a margin of error in there that you're gonna repeat something exactly as somebody else. That, in one of my sessions with Mr. Franzi over here, he gave us a chart, and the chart had 120 different applications that exist. That chart is probably a couple months old, so think double. Every day I get an email from this particular gentleman who now is giving me new tools every day to solve some problem. So some of these folks are just knee deep in it and building new stuff. But thinking of building new stuff, I'm going to Kathleen.
Yeah.
So when you at Experian decide you need to build a new product, if you will, how do you go about it? How do you go about testing it and validating it before you roll it out to the
Yeah,
market?
so whenever we're looking or trying to determine what might be the scope of new products that we want to build, we took a very deliberate, I would say, cultural effort a number of years ago to change the way that we thought about innovation. Because there's research and experimentation for the sake of just seeing what we can do with this and what might appear. We decided to turn that on a slightly different angle and focus on what are our clients' biggest challenges, what are the needs in the marketplace, what do we anticipate are going to be those needs and challenges 12, 18 months down the road, and how would we solve that? So as we think about, we'd like to start with that challenge or that problem and then focus on what are the jobs to be done. You might have heard that expression before if you've looked at agile or lean development. What are those jobs that we need to do? What needs to happen to solve that problem? So for example, if the challenge is that people who are younger and have no credit record yet, how do I figure out if they're credit worthy and whether to give them a credit card and how much credit limit to give them? That's a challenge. I need to figure that out. I don't have a whole lot of data on them. They're young, they haven't been working very long. How do I get comfortable with that risk? So then the jobs to be done are, I need to find some way to get comfortable about understanding the risk. So therefore, I need to have some additional data. I need to be able to get data somehow on that person. I need to be able to model that. And then once I've gone through those steps, I may be able to come to a conclusion about how to assess that risk worthiness so that clients can decide if they have the appetite to lend to somebody like that. So we start with what is the challenge in the market. That's probably unsolved. That's a great opportunity for innovation. What are those things that I need to do? And then the next step is how might I do it? And so instead of just dreaming up some technology and trying to find a problem that I might be able to apply it to, what actually is there a need for out there? What needs to be done for that need to be solved? How do I do it? And then I start looking at new ways of doing things. What technology can I use?
But how do you go about finding the problem, right? The marketing guy asking, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, identifying the problem.
Yeah,
How do you go about that?
It's how do we identify the problem? It's market research, it's listening to our client base, it's doing some experimentation ourselves. A big part of our business is actually a direct-to-consumer business. We're all consumers. What do I wish that my experience with banking online was, or understanding my credit report, or protecting my identity, or understanding my health records? So some of that's personal, but a lot of it is market research and then also talking to our clients. The people who are spending money with you will usually have an opinion about what they wish you would do or what you're doing wrong. And so we have client advisory boards, we ask them frequently, we survey, we do NPS surveys, Net Promoter Scores. So we have a number of ways that we're surveying that all the time.
Okay, fantastic. Usama, we talked about hiring and those kinds of things. But have you had exposure to, and the question is, can you use tools like this to identify or predict, if you will, who the right person is for the job? Will they stick, right? Because a lot of times, people that do hiring and recruiting, there's formulas that they use, et cetera, et cetera. We talked a little bit about that. But ultimately, it's a big investment, it's a dollar investment for training and stuff like that, and then 3 months in, the person quits and costs a lot of money. So.
Do you mean, is there a crystal ball to figure out
Yes.
which one is going to sue you if you hire them? That would be really nice, yeah.
Well, there's an innovation over here, we can do that.
I mean, that's the multi-million-dollar question right there. There are tools out there that are starting to develop this, and it's they're getting better, and they're going to require a lot more data and testing and development. But I think eventually we will get to a place where you can predict behavior. The issue legally is you got to test it so that it's not resulting in a disparate impact on people in protected categories. So, for example, I'm currently working with a client and testing conducting due diligence on a resume screener, but it's more than a resume screener. You actually feed the tool all of the data about your existing positions and the people at your current company, your current employees. What are their characteristics? Why are they successful? Right? All of the things about your current set, and then all of the things you want in a successful candidate based on who's successful at your company and culture fit. And so all of these characteristics are being analyzed based on data, based on all sorts of data about the individual, their performance records, etc. So it could work. It could potentially work, right? So it can give you a very potentially accurate predictor based on the data that you feed it. The problem from a legal perspective is going to be, excuse my French, but shit data, shit result, right? I mean, that's basically what you're going to get. So if your current environment is, you're 80% male and white, and you're looking to hire people, well, even if you tell the tool to specifically ignore protect race and ethnicity, what about other potential factors or potential issues that could potentially indicate race, right? And what about the fact that your existing working place is primarily of one dominant, gender and race? If that's the issue, it's going to bring back the most successful candidates may match the people who are there, right? And you're going to perpetuate existing bias. You can work against that. So you can actually train the tools in a lot of different ways. You can do, Wizard of Oz testing, whatever that's called, right? You can train the tool to ignore all of these things and to focus on the true merits of the candidate. And I've seen it happen. So it is possible. It just needs a concerted effort that's a combination of the lawyer telling you what you need to do, and then the technical, the vision, and the people who are developing the tool to actually do the work and test it and develop the protocol, the guardrails for how to make sure it works properly.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think as I've listened to this too, if like as an audience member, right, it starts to become scary. It's like, holy cow, I don't want to step into that minefield of privacy. I don't want to step in the minefield of bias. I'm just trying to create some clever stuff, and now, oh my God, I might be violating copyright. How do I even get started? I better just sort of wait and see. This was actually an issue when a lot of the public tools first hit the market about 18 months ago for us at Experian. And so we have a lot of curious people within the organization. They're creative, curious technologists, and they wanted to start playing with these tools. So they heard about, I can use ChatGPT for free, and they're downloading it and using it on their machine and trying it out on various things. And then lo and behold, the news hits that some Samsung engineers have done this. You may have read about this in the news, and they're uploading their code and it's getting published into the ChatGPT public model, and people are seeing proprietary intellectual property showing up in the public models. And that news broke, and CISOs and information security professionals around the world went, we're shutting this down. And we shut it down, we locked it down. No more could people access any of those public GPT type tools with company equipment. And we realized that that's not the great way either, right? We could be really scared, and we could wait and just let it all get sorted out and come back out of the cave in 2 years, but we want to lean into this. And so one of the first things that we did, and I would advise you thinking about this, is understand your risk tolerance. As a big company, we created an acceptable use policy. That was done in conjunction with our IT department and legal and outside advice, and we came up with the acceptable use policy. The next thing we did was we created a training. And if any of you have worked at or at a big company, you probably have to take InfoSec training or various kinds of certification trainings online from time to time. Is that kind of a thing? People could take this training once they pass a little quiz at the end, and got approval from their boss, they could now access the public tools in the way that was approved. And a lot of it was not using any Experian data in the prompts or in the searches that were going on there if you're using the public tool. But once we had that in place, it unleashed a little bit of wiggle room for folks to start trying out the technology. And one of the things I saw a quote, it's S.J. Sindhu, she is a Sri Lankan American novelist and short story writer. And when we think about innovation, that's about being creative and in some ways being an artist, right? We're innovating. And she said, we don't need the AI to create the art. Right? There's a lot of people in the workforce too are going, oh my gosh, is my job at the call center going to be replaced? Is my job as the copywriter going to be replaced? Is my job as the legal researcher going to be replaced? They're scared, right? And so her quote was, we don't need AI, generative AI, to make the art. We need the AI to check the email, make the appointments, gather the groceries, so the humans have more time to make art. And I love that because it talks about the power of AI that you can start to explore and use today. Don't you wish you had more time to read all the articles that you're getting from your podcasts and from your basic newsletters? Have them summarize it for you. Just try it. If you're wondering whether the letter you've just written or the memo, the email you're about to send, maybe send it through the proofreader and see if it has a better way to express that with empathy. Think about the ways that you might be able to use it now, because that understanding is just going to unleash more creative ideas and understanding about maybe how your people want to use it and how your business can use it too.
I think, one of the things that Hector mentioned in the very beginning is about speed to market, reduced hours, and there's some definite benefits, and again, depending on how you use that people time and how you do that over. So it's been about 40 minutes, so I want to make sure we have some time for some questions. What's that?
40 minutes went fast. That's
We can keep going, baby.
Yeah, baby.
We got alcohol. Well, someone needs another drink.
I know, where's the refill?
Why don't we take a few questions?
Of course.
I've got a few summary stuff. Larry.
Kathleen, you had mentioned preparing a report, and your earlier example was based on interest rates and some demographics. And then you said sometimes AI hallucinates. How do you fact check the hallucinations?
Yeah, so great question. So how we fact check hallucinations. It depends a lot on the use case. And so for analytics, the way that we're doing that now, again, we started in-house. And we started on protected data that we know is inside our four walls. And we're comparing it against human intervention. So right now, before anything goes outside, we're comparing that against known results or expected results. Sort of, we ballpark it, and does it make sense? You can just do a little bit of a sanity check on things. One of the other areas that we're using generative AI right now, though, too, is in our call center. And so in our call center, for example, our call center operators, the way they historically would do, like you're able to call Experian if you have questions about how is my credit score calculated, or I think there might be an error on my credit report. By regulation, we have to have this kind of call center. We have hundreds of employees there, and as a consumer calls in and asks a question, that call center employee, while you're asking your question, is looking through a lot of knowledge databases and trying to find the answer to that question and listening while they're typing and trying to get that information back. Our lab created a chatbot using generative AI so that while the consumer is asking that question, the operator, not the consumer, the operator is typing in that consumer's question and concern. And the chatbot is trained to give a natural language answer back that the operator can then say, and to answer with empathy to try and tamp down, because when people are calling credit bureau, they're usually not happy about something. And so you want to kind of tamp down the energy of that call and give it in a way that provides a natural language answer instead of them having to come up with that on the fly. We're using that call center operator as one of the fact checkers because we include in that answer little footnotes of the source. They can just click on that. The source, the old-fashioned way, will pop up. They'll sanity check it really quickly and then answer. The more comfortable and more experienced they are, they'll know that without even checking. We have found actually that's leading to better employee satisfaction and less turnover in the call center. So when I get that pressure from the board about where's my productivity savings, I'm not cutting heads, we're actually turning over less heads, and that is real cost savings. And so there's a lot of cool stuff there, but hallucinations are real. You need to have a human in the loop for a while. So we try to have that until we get better confidence, and then you just need to have additional monitoring. It just has to be there.
One quick question on that. I've heard if you use private settings on, for example, ChatGPT, you can upload your own data. If you're uploading your own data, does it have hallucinations, or is it only if it's using kind of the public database?
So I'm not the complete expert, and this stuff is changing all the time. A lot of time when you're doing private, it's comparing and combining your information with publicly
So it still
available, the
mixing.
public model, and mixing it in. It's not publishing yours up necessarily, but it could be bringing in anything it's finding in the internet, so you're still at risk of hallucinations you need to take care of.
So, a friend of mine just is a Google partner, and she was just at a Google convention, and Google's coming out with a lot of new tools, and one of the things they're coming out, I'll call it their own private data lake. So once you start working with Gemini, you're not going out into the public. So that's obviously a big concern of, mixing your stuff with public data.
Did you guys hear about the lawyer that filed a brief in New York?
Yep.
Right, where the AI tool made up cases that didn't exist for things that don't make, weren't out there. So that's the hallucination. One of the things my firm has done in the last couple of years is we helped develop a company develop the tool and test it for them and beta test it, called Co-Counsel. Eventually, recently got acquired by Thomson Reuters, I think. With Co-Counsel, it's basically, to solve that problem. And the problem is hallucinations when it comes to legal citations. So it comes up with, here's the argument, here's the briefs, here are the things that we need to write, give me the starting point. So we have it as a starting point, but then of course lawyers have to review every one of the cases that are cited in there. But it can cut down so much time in the starting point, because so much is done, goes into the research, the writing, the drafting. What if you can cut 80% of that by getting a draft up front that's already been, trained to only look at an existing database of case law as opposed to making up its own case law. Right?
Well, that was the case with my case studies that were just totally made up to support my point.
They did a great job, just they were just wrong. Who else got a question? I can't believe nobody? First.
This is for the connector.
Yes, sir.
This stuff sounds great, but it sounds really expensive, and it also seems intimidating in terms of where do you go, how do you start. You said you jumped in with both feet. Any advice you would give to the group as to how can you do this most effectively as well as on an economical basis?
Okay, wow. Well, economically, we have, I guess I'm all in, I'm all vested in. We spend several $100s a month on tools, or at least a few $100s. How do you put a price tag on engaged employees? My employees are so freaking engaged. They absolutely love what they're doing.
But even before you use the tools, you had to have some framework or something to say, how do I start?
Okay, I'm the connector, so I used a tool that no one here has heard of. It's called Mosaic, and because I've connected with several people, this particular software only gets used by Coca-Cola and Nestle and Nutella, those giants, because I actually know the guy who invented that software. He's out of Israel. He's such an amazing guy. He didn't tell me he invented that software, someone else did, that I know. That was our first entryway. At a ref organization, I launched that. It's a Fortune box, and it has AI on it, and it's a marketing piece, and it's a vehicle for good. That thing opened so many doors. as soon as I presented at the REF forum back in April, was it?
Last year.
Yeah, last year, things kind of blew up. And somebody grabbed that thing and the doors opened up and opportunities opened up. And I'm like, okay, I'm onto something. This really resembles what happened back in 1990 with the Mac. And my people they're dropping F-bombs every day. This is so fun. This is so frustrating, you know? But today's the worst it'll ever be. It continues to get better. I connected with everybody I could on LinkedIn that is doing great things and blazing a trail. And I've formed alliances and relationships, and I'm a relationship guy, so my relationships run deep. So that's why I invested in, like I said, my team is giddy. My team is built, they're telling me these things every day, like, dude, I can't believe you're going out there and pioneering this thing. So that lights a fire under me, and I know they're happy, I know they're content, we're making more money, we got more opportunities coming our way, the opportunities that would have never, ever shown themselves.
But Hector, you also invested in training.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about the coursework that you put your?
Yeah, we spent
You're welcome.
spent a lot of money through a company called Mind Valley. And once I did that first project, I started looking, and then I saw something online, Mind Valley. I researched into it. It was not cheap, you know. And we spent 4 hours, myself, every team member, we got a boutique agency here in Orange County, for 6 months, learning, you know, generative AI, learning how to prompt and do all these images. We were already 7 months into doing it ourselves before we did that. So then we got 6 months training on that. We're all in. Like, I'll be writing a book on this soon. like it's just incredible. It's an incredible journey.
And I think, Bruce, knowing who you are, you're not really talking about creating art, right? So for me, when I heard that the agency guy say I fired all my copywriters, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe we're doing that. So over the last 6-7 months, I've experimented with different tools, right, from a copy standpoint, if you will. Like I said, I got great case studies that were all BS, but I use it for ideation. To me, you can't disconnect, and I think, you know, my advice would be to experiment of what are you trying to accomplish with the various tools. Again, whether you're using, you know, the prompt tools, the chat, the Gemini, the Copilots, the Chads. I use a tool, for example, I got this 50-page research study. It's like, oh man, last thing I want to do is read this thing and try to figure out what's important. I have a tool actually that will do that. I think you do that too, right? And pull out some of the highlights and key points. Then I can say, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to dig into it. You know, took a little while to figure out how to ask it and what to do, but it's all, for me, it's personally been experimentation. Rick?
Man, so Kathleen, we've read that prompt engineers are the new hot job that you want to get, or English writing. From experience perspective, are you actually looking, maybe you can define what a prompt engineer is in case people want, and is it something that you see the company needing in the future, prompt engineers?
Yeah, it kind of actually ties back to Bruce's question too, in a way. Like, if you haven't touched, and not everybody in the room raise their hand, if you haven't touched generative AI yet, or you haven't done much, go on your favorite search engine, and Google has tons of training courses for free that are very solid. So if you search on Google Gen AI training, you will find loads, and it's from just getting started to helping your engineers. It's great stuff there, and then from there, Andrew Ng, he's a very famous professor. He's partnered with Coursera and some others for free training too, that's also multi-segment, very good. The very first course you should take, once it's sort of like what is generative AI, is prompt engineering. Prompt engineering for everybody. Prompt engineering is how you have the right conversation to get something meaningful out of the tool. And so knowing how to ask the question and giving it a little more direction for what you want that answer to look like, and helping it from going astray, and knowing to ask a chain of questions just as if you were having a conversation. And you start to use it as you're going through the training. And tools like Bard, ChatGPT 3.5 is the completely free one. It's trained on such old data. I think it's fun to play with, but it's not the greatest in terms of relevancy and what it's trained on. For $20 a month, you get ChatGPT 4, but there are a lot of products that are competing and just as high quality. So prompt engineering as a science, I have a lot of people who are asking me too, hey, my kid is in college right now, they're studying computer science, are they in the right major? My daughter's in college, her boyfriend's saying, I'm not sure if I'm AI ready, am I even gonna be hireable, is there a job for me? I'm like, you need to know how to use AI, you need to know how to use generative AI if you wanna be expert. What the companies are all looking for are experts in writing the prompts. Because like Usama said, if you junk in, junk out, right? And so if you
That's
don't,
what I say.
yeah. I haven't had the one yet, so. Misquoting the lawyer. So, but, if you know how to write really good questions, you're gonna get even more fantastic and richer output and get it faster. But what's really interesting is that from the time we started this, maybe 12 months ago, you can ask ChatGPT or your tool, write me a good prompt, because I want to do this. And it will write the good prompts for you, and you learn from that. So I mean, this space is just moving so fast. Prompt engineers know the science behind that, and increasingly, prompt engineers know the science that companies like OpenAI and Google and others are using to make those tools better. One just sort of fun fact, the scientists who are deep into building this capability, the ones that are being hired by OpenAI and the like, when they are getting deep into their math and they're finding something that works better, faster, more efficiently, they are publishing on a daily basis their findings, and they're using Twitter, X, to announce their papers. So where they used to kind of like wait for a journal on some, quarterly basis to publish the latest journal research, it's moving too fast, and so they're announcing and trying to get, kudos and acknowledgement of their great technical accomplishments, and they're using X. So if you have enthusiasts within your company who are following this stuff, ask them what they've seen on X lately.
Okay, a couple more, because we're getting way beyond our time. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask this of what Experian does, if there was bias checking on some of the stuff, and how did that result? Did you find bias and then make adjustments?
We're not venturing into that just yet, because we know it's a minefield and we don't want to trip over regulation. So a big part of our mission is financial inclusion and opening those opportunities, like I said, for young people or for those who are sort of underrepresented in the credit economy. And so we know that there's risk associated with that. Until we have better in-house systems that we know we can control and measure for bias, we're not rolling anything out like that. Great question.
Brad?
Since the ability to use AI is so data dependent, right? Garbage in, garbage. Seems like really the key thing is how much data do you have? So I have a question for the attorney. Is it wrong, or would I get in trouble if I went out and I bought some databases and then from third parties and then fed them into AI and used the AI to crunch that data? Or is that now pushing the line on, I don't know?
That's not that doesn't really create the legal issue. So you can certainly, that's not where the legal issue comes in doing that kind of, deploying that kind of strategy. There's nothing wrong with it from a legal perspective.
Okay.
The issue is going to be what decisions are made using that AI tool, and do they impact individuals, whether employees or consumers? And is that decision, does the AI tool use data that from which you can predict or identify an individual's protected classification, race, age, gender, religion, etc. 16 in California and plus, there's a lot more. That's the issue. And I'll give you an example. Recently, at a there was a presentation. Chairman of my firm was presenting our annual attorney retreat, and he asked. The presentation was he asked the AI tool that generates pictures based on a prompt, so you tell it, what
Like Dolly or something.
Dolly, that's what it is. But he asked Dolly, he said who he is. He said, this is what I'm looking to do. I'm meeting with some lawyers to talk about XYZ topic. Draw me a picture of them, right? And the tool generated a picture in a conference room with someone, writing on a board, and all the people around the room were all white, We're all skinny. We're all dressed up with full suits. The ladies were all blonde hair, and that's what it presented because it surveys the internet, and the data that's in is most of the legal industry is obviously populated by the majority category, and so that's what it looks like, right? So that the issue is going to be bias. It's not necessarily that the process that you going out there and buying data and feeding that data into the tool. That's the problem. The problem is how is the tool making decisions and making selections and making assessments about people.
Okay. So I think we'll stick around for a little while if you have other questions, but I have one final question for each one of you. A couple minutes, right? What advice would you give the audience about using, trying, playing with, testing?
Can I start?
Sure, you got the mic.
So the first thing that I would advise any business owner or anybody involved in any kind of business initiative to develop this is engage the legal department of your organization first. One of the issues, and I've seen this from a number of clients, I get complaints from the general counsel at various large companies who are like pulling out their hair because somebody in the organization decided to go out and engage and sign a contract with an AI vendor to develop something or to start using something without telling lawyers, the legal department, right? It's not because they're going to tell you don't do it, it's that they're going to help you protect the company from exposure. So from my perspective, first thing I would say is you need a lawyer at that table. But you need all the other people at the table who will be able to help you figure out the best solution from all of the business, strategy, technical, IT, security, all of the things that need to be done.
Okay. Yeah, I could probably gave some of my tips. Like I said, if you're corporate-wise, get an acceptable use policy, get things in place, very similar to what Usama said, and then start to experiment, especially on things that are mundane tasks that could make time free up so you can create more art and more innovation. But for all of you in the room, download one of the tools and start playing with it. It's fun. It teaches you really quickly some of the things it's good at and not so good at. You understand those prompts, and when ask your kids, have them help you. It's really fun to start playing with it, and you learn a lot just by getting hands on keyboard.
Great, Doctor.
Yeah, I'm gonna make that sentiment play, but I think find someone who's doing it. And I mean, I have found the AI community, especially on LinkedIn, and now everywhere, that it's like, what a great community of people sharing that actually care about teaching. And Bruce, you know Paul, right?
I do.
He's sort of saying, what's up? Saw him this morning. We're doing AI with him. I think he told you that. But find someone who's into it, because all we want to do is share. When we find something we love, well, especially me, dude, like if I find something that I love, right, Rick, come on now. I gotta share. I have to share, so I am an open book. If anybody has any questions, I would love to talk to you, point you in the right direction of what I know. And lastly, the future of AI is so bright, I gotta throw these bad boys on.
I want to thank our panel. They'll stick around a little bit.